This is Dr. Thomas Jordan, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yes, you are. Dr. Thomas Jordan joins me live on Friday. We're hanging out and we're talking about love, sweet, sweet love. I guess let's just jump right in, you and I, and let's start talking about it. You said just off mic a minute ago that you've been thinking about love for decades.
Absolutely. My own love life and the love lives of other people. Basically, those are the two reasons I wrote the book, set up the website. I discovered that people need a little help with their love lives, so I was hoping to do some of that.
Love has, in English, love is one word, but it means so many things. I love you. I love you. I love, I love this. I love it. We say it for a lot of things. How do you define love?
Well, you left out one type of love, and that is in love. When you put that little word in right before love, that's the one I'm interested in, because that one's an exclusive feeling for another person, and it's very important. And if you think about love as an unpredictable, uncontrollable emotion, it's wonderful. Who knows where it comes from? It's mysterious. You can't control it. And when I wrote the book at the beginning, I mentioned this is not a book about love. This is a book about love relationships, the type of relationships we set up when we fall in love, healthy or unhealthy. That's what I'm interested in. That's what we can do something about.
What is a love life then?
A love life is the sum total of relationships that you have had in your life up to the point that you're measuring it, that involve the emotion of love, past and present. That's how I define it. So your love life begins the moment you show up in the world. When you look at another human being, a mom, a dad, someone else, and you fall in love. Hello, take care of me. That's part of your love life all the way to the end.
And then does that mean that love is developed like a muscle, like a love muscle?
Love is something that happens to us. We don't make it happen. What gets developed is the kind of relationship we can form when we fall in love, when we have love. If the relationship we form is healthy, then the love is nurtured and developed. If the relationship is unhealthy, problems.
Okay. And then so I get that love is sort of this thing that happens to you, but can you get better at being in love through experience and practice and awareness and whatnot?
Absolutely. And the way you do that is by becoming aware of the kind of relationship you set up when you're in love. And that's what the book that I wrote is about. Becoming aware of what kind of relationship you set up and whether it's healthy or unhealthy. Because when you set up the relationship you set up is like a container that the love is in. And if it's a healthy one, then the love is thriving, it's growing, it's nurtured. If the relationship is unhealthy, then the love can be damaged or destroyed. So it's really important to become aware of what kind of relationship you set up when you're in love. And the idea that I throw out in the book to help people with that is what I call the psychological love life. It's the love life we carry around in our minds that determines the kind of relationship we set up when we fall in love.
Okay. And then if we discover that we're bad at picking, some people seem to fall in love easier than others. This is what I want to get into. They close a relationship out and then all of a sudden they're in love again. Is love more sticky for some people?
The way it's sticky is if you're setting up a relationship that's unhealthy when you fall in love and you have unresolved hurt about those disappointments, it is possible to interfere with new love when it comes your way. And there are plenty of people, too many people, that avoid love, sort of given up on love because they have unresolved hurts that are in the way, that form a barrier to new love. So that's a problem. In my book, I talk about the problem that I looked at the most was repetitive love life disappointments. That's where people make the same mistakes over and over again. Same kind of people, same familiar problems, same disappointing outcomes. And if you've had enough of those, you get to the point where you reach resignation. give up on love. And I discovered that there were a lot of people with that problem, resignation, because on my blog, I wrote an article about it, and there were a lot of great commentary about how tough it was to let go of that feeling of giving up on love.
If you fall in love, is it the same quality of love every time? I mean, like, I think you can timeline it, like when you're just like crazy, stupid, getting lost in your way to like home, you're like just so distracted with it. But then you find out a month later, 6 months later, 20 years later that, the love has changed, has turned. Is it possible to fall into love, but have it be still ultimately a bad love?
You're talking about the excitement of the beginning,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
where
That
there's
can
a
happen.
lot of desire and a lot of attraction. You don't really know the person you're falling for quite yet,
Right.
perhaps. And so that feeling is really a motivator to get together. It's Mother Nature's way of making something happen. What people do with that emotion is the next step. Some people mess it up.
Yeah.
They go in for the moment and then they back out and run away for the next one. Their lives are littered with changing partners because they don't want it to get any deeper. It's hurtful, perhaps, if it gets too deep in their
Right.
memory. So, and then there are people who nurture because they take the in love experience and they move it to relationship. And once your love experience becomes mingled with relationship, you're interested in preserving it, you're interested in growing it, that you're on your way to a healthy love relationship when you do that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I track all that. Let's. I want to. So I'm sort of thinking of sort of grasping for the question I want, because it's interesting. You can fall into what is infatuation, I guess you would say, right? You can fall
Uh-huh.
into infatuation and maybe realize that you're really not in love anymore, and not even because of damage, just because it's just not a good match. Like it worked out in the moment, but it doesn't have the long-term kind of sustainable love that you would need to be with someone. And
Right.
so we either stay and we tough it out because we have kids, because leaving is harder than staying, or whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
But is that a form of low quality love then? I mean, because ultimately you care about the person. Like if you're with
Yeah.
someone for 60 years, are you always in love with them, or have you just survived?
Well, people say to me, I love so and so, but I'm not in love with them
Yeah.
all the time. I mean, that's what you tell a therapist.
Right.
Um, and that makes a difference. When they put the little word in before love, I know this is special. Infatuation, I wouldn't necessarily move that to the love category quite yet.
Okay.
I think you can be sexually attracted to people, infatuated with them for physical and or personality reasons, and not really be in love or have love feelings. So there's a lot that interacts with love. There's the pattern of relationship, which is my special interest. There's also maturity. Maturity comes into it. Um, but I think most of the problems are, what I discovered is most of the problems are in the form of the relationship that gets created. Um, if it's unhealthy, for example, I made a list in the book of unhealthy relationship experiences that tend to get into people's love lives without awareness. And that's the important point, is that we can learn these things unconsciously. Things like if you suffered an abandonment when you were a child, if you experienced abuse, for example, between your parents, or there was neglect, or a lot of self-centeredness in your family of origin, these kinds of experience often enough get into our love lives and become repetitive. People will go looking for someone who has commitment problems and not really know that they're doing that. And they're doing it because of the dirty word I'm about to say. You ready?
Yeah. Right. Hit me with it.
Familiar.
Ah.
And
Yes.
the core of familiar is family. So familiar can be a good thing or a bad thing. If familiar is telling you to go after abusive partners or neglectful, unavailable partners, then that's the blueprint that's in your mind that's going to be repetitive in your love life until you mess with it, until you become aware that this is happening. And in my book, I talk about, because these things are learned, I talk about a simple and very effective way to mess with it called the unlearning method. And my unlearning method has 3 steps. Step 1 is to identify what's in your psychological love life. Step 2 is to disrupt it once you become aware that it's unhealthy and how it's unhealthy. And the 3rd step is to practice the opposite. If you were brought up in a home, for example, that was abusive, you practice respect and you expect respect from your partner. And you build that into your expectations. So you're, in a sense, steering your love life in a new direction.
When you're talking about practicing respect and you've been raised in an abusive home, how do you develop that ability to do it? I mean, it's one thing to say it, but here I am. I'm trying to learn how to live with respect and trust. And I just don't have those tools. How do you develop that stuff, man?
Yeah. Well, writing a book is only a beginning. And
Right.
some people, believe it or not, they read a book, they can make change. And I'm interested in the book as a guidebook, and that was my initial purpose in writing it, is to provide people with something that they could follow. And there are actually steps in the book to do that. But I expect that there'll be a lot of people who'll need a little more support than just what's available in the book. And they might need a counseling experience or a therapy experience to develop these themes a little bit more. For example, we're talking about abuse and respect. When you talk about respect and understand how the lack of it is unhealthy, you develop a sensitivity to respect. You review your relationships and find out that there wasn't a lot of respect in those relationships. So the consciousness, the being aware that respect's important, the understanding that comes with it, develops that sensitivity. So people go into their love lives, they go into their dating life, they go into their love life with different expectations about what they should find and what kind of love life they should have. So that's the kind of sensitivity that comes as a consequence of having the consciousness now that something needs to be corrected in your love life.
If you have a middle-aged relationship, a marriage that's been around for a while, it's time tested and everything, how do you, I mean, you love each other, but how do you maintain that relationship? You got kids, you got work, you got a pandemic going on. There's a lot of things to deal with. You're like, oh, I gotta lose 40 pounds or whatever it is.
Right.
It's really hard to maintain those things.
Right.
I wonder if you do that with a well-established, but I don't want to say unmaintained, but we'll say unmaintained relationship.
Okay, well, I'll use my wife as an example. Oh, I'm in trouble already. I've been married 27 years. My wife and I, we are in a group practice together. We both see patients out of our apartment in Manhattan, on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. We're very busy. We've got a lot to do. The pandemic's on, isolating us and so on. And we have a son. He's 23. Here's my solution. I make dates with my wife. Consciously make dates with my wife. Now, restaurants are a problem in town, and so on. I go for a walk. I go to a store. I spend time talking with her. We set up a time to do that. And I find that that's very helpful, and it's time together. And when the pandemic's gone, we'll go back to doing it. A nice date once or twice a month in a middle-aged marriage, you're cooking. It's really good. Because what you're doing basically is you're remembering what it was like to begin your relationship. And those memories come back when you're sitting across a nice dinner table, relaxed and having fun and remembering things together. So that's the way people reconnect, in my opinion.
No, I love that. And it's something that I practice in my own relationship when it's possible. I try to get us out of the house to some kind of fine art type thing. Maybe we walk a museum together.
Right.
Hopefully we go see musical. I love musicals. I love opera, all that stuff.
Right.
And so I try to get us not only out of the house, but dressed up. And here's another thing I do. And this is just a tip on love is I call my significant other and I ask her out on a date. You know,
She could say no, right?
she can say no, but she never does. But I love to do that because, you know, it is, and then I act like I'm, oh gosh, I hope she says yes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then she'll be in the other room, and then I hang up, and I'm like, yes, yes, because that is how it happens.
It's good.
Earlier on,
Absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely.
And
Right.
even if it's we're just playing a game, we're playing it, and it's fun, and it's our thing, you know. So it's a lot of fun to do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, dates are big. I totally agree because you have to do life at its all its tasks, no matter what. And you're doing those things together, and they're not always fun.
Yeah.
But slowing down and saying, we're like in our case, we're going to the beach and we're going to just be at the beach, nothing else, or whatever it is. You get to do those good things together as well. You don't have to just do these negative things.
Yes. You remember Dr. Ruth?
Of course.
I saw a video of her where she gave an assignment to a couple where the woman went to a restaurant bar, a nice restaurant bar. She sat at the bar, and her husband picked her up. And he came to the bar, and he eyed her, and he came over and talked to her. And then they went home together. And the idea was to stimulate the sexual drive in the relationship a bit more. And these people were having problems with that. So that was one procedure she offered them. That was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's another one. Double date. Just get one of your buddies and say, hey, grab your wife. Let's go out. And look, if you're a dude, you should take your woman dancing, because I don't know a woman that doesn't love to dance. You know? And if your woman doesn't love to dance, then okay, great. And I'm saying woman in this case, whatever kind of couple you are, take your significant other out to do something that they never get to do that you know that they love.
Yes.
Even if you're not big on it. It's a wonderful way to pour some goodness into the relationship.
Absolutely. I got one more for you.
All right.
I got one more for you. This one's a little bit different. Since I'm a psychologist, of course, I'm going to talk about the psychology for a moment. Plan a little time to listen to your wife's memories about her life. You sit down with her and you listen to something she remembers about something she did, maybe you don't know about. Maybe it's a recall that she's never told you about, and she remembers the details and you listen to them. And as a byproduct of that experience together, you get to know your wife more deeply. She feels more intimate with you because you've listened to the experience that she's told you about. And you can do vice versa on that one.
Yeah.
It deepens the intimacy. You're not going anywhere, but you're using communication, which is a very important tool in making sure a relationship grows and develops. You're using that in order to do something new, something different.
What about physical contact? Do you try to make some, because when you're flirting, you're touching an elbow or whatever, you know?
Yes.
How do you use that to maintain a relationship?
Well, tenderness is communicated by touch. And I'm not talking sexualized touch. I'm talking about intimate touch. Intimacy, sometimes when you say the word intimacy, people think of sex, but I think intimacy is much broader than sex. Sex is a wonderful gymnastic activity, best done when you're in love with somebody. That's beautiful. But intimacy is the emotional connection you have with somebody. It's the togetherness, the mutuality, the exchange of information between two people, the getting to know each other. That's the territory of emotional intimacy. So I believe touch, touching somebody when you're speaking to them, when you're in love with them, is a way of communicating connection to that person. You know, it's beautiful.
Yeah, touch. Music, same thing.
Same thing. Very primitive.
Any particular kind of music that you think that creates the stuff? I mean, there's certain, obviously, people that sing certain songs have words, memories attached to them. I mean, that for sure, that part of it is real. But like, you can have a song that's your song, whatever. But what else about music makes it? I mean, yes, it's hardwired in. But talk about that.
I'm 67 years old. My wife is 62. I have a range of music on my computer, right? And if I'm playing a song from the 70s, my wife is in the door. Now, she's a bit of a singer. She's moving around. She's singing. She remembers the songs. She used to sing in a group. So that's a moment. And I'm back there in the 70s too, because that was a great decade for music. And so
Yes.
we're jiving together, and that's a connection right there. Mm-hmm.
Those connections, are they cumulative, do you think? I mean, do you stack up a benefit that you can found on, or do you have to always rebuild, or I don't know, recondition, or how would you describe it?
I think you have to do both. I think there's a building, because that's the nature of intimacy. Intimacy is something you grow. So there's a certain amount of repetition and making sure there's growth in a relationship. But I think there's new things that have to be found to keep the relationship growing as well. So I like both ideas, cumulative, as well as looking for new experiences together.
Okay.
When you find a new experience, whatever it is, you go to a museum, you go to new artwork, you go to a concert, you encounter something new about someone you've been living with for so many years. And it's great. I mean, people are endless, they're not limited. And when you're in love with somebody, that little word again, people can open up their individuality to you if you're open to it. And that's a beautiful thing. Sharing individuality with someone. When my wife and I took this apartment, I realized that her independence and my own were two very important features in our relationship. So I have my office next to her office, but my space, my man den, and her woman den, very different, and they're exclusively our own. And that's something that I really enjoy in our relationship, because I kind of see it as an umbrella. That's our relationship with two individualities nestled underneath it. So I think making room for a person to have their individuality, their unique individuality in the relationship, is a wonderful way to acknowledge a person and to help love grow.
John, who's a co-founder, co-host of the show, but not here today, asks, how do we get our significant other to try new hobbies together? What if one of us likes it and the other one doesn't? And I guess I would add on to this, what if John is in a band, his wife is not in a band, and so she loves it and everything, but she doesn't have to be there for all of it. So how do you not create jealousy or other problems because one of you is off doing what they love and the other person is, I don't know, cleaning the house instead or whatever? Not that it's not equitable, but how do you maintain that? So hobbies.
Yeah. It's two parts to your question. The second part is more difficult than the first. I'm recalling, I like road bikes. I'm a bicyclist, always. And when we got married, I said to my wife, Victoria, that 50-pound clunker you're riding on? Let me buy you a nice carbon bike and something real light and helmet and the shoes and the whole nine. No, I don't want to do that, she says. I said, oh, come on. So I'm trying to change her. I bring it up every once in a while. She doesn't want to do that. Okay. So I ride with her, but I'm always interested in going a little faster, blah, 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 So at one point, I give up. This is what I do. That's what you do. So I continued riding my bike, occasionally with other people, often alone. It was fine. One day she says, I want a bike like yours.
Yes.
Wait a minute. I thought you want another new 50-pound clunker? No, I want a bike. I want a helmet. I want the shoes. And I had to think about that. When I was trying to get her to change, forget it. Resistance, resentment, don't change me. But when I enjoyed what I was doing in her presence, she became interested in it, not defensive. Looked at it a bit and thought, maybe I could do that as well. Maybe I should join him. And so I found, and I talk about this in the book too, because I think trying to change people is one of the ways in which people cope with problems in a relationship. And it doesn't really work. In 30-something years of practice, I haven't met anybody that changed anybody else. People change because they want to change from the inside out. The second part of your question, somebody doing something as dynamic as being in a band and and so on, playing music, and the other person washing dishes or cleaning the house, boy, I reacted that there's a problem there, because the person washing the dishes is not going to be that happy with what's going on, and you'd want your significant other to enjoy some of the creativity of music making and so on. So that's a little bit more of a problem. What pops into my head is I'd make sure my wife tells me what she likes to do, and I'd be in the audience for that right away.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
In other words, we'd balance it off that way.
Yeah. What if your partner is someone who's just more of a homebody, and their hobby is something as, I don't know, we'll say mundane as watching TV or reading a book. And then the other half is like, I need to go out and play these drums or play this guitar or sing into this mic. And, nothing crazy is going to go on. They're not going to go on to become superstars, but they're going to play local bars and everything, is it's what they love to do. And then your thing is sitting at home reading a book. Can the person in the band, they want them to come out and participate, but it's just not their thing. How do you deal with your own insecurity? Like if your significant other loves reading books and that's what they want to do, and you want to leave them alone during their time, what do you do about that when it's a drastically different balance? They're still a good couple, but there's
two things come into my mind. When you're bordering on incompatibility, that could be a problem. You want to be careful with that. Incompatibility means I like things that are so drastically different than you, we don't find much common ground, and that could be a problem. I think that type of problem can be consciously handled by participating with the other person's enjoyments, whatever they are. If my wife likes to read and doesn't like to do what I want to do, I'd make sure that I read the book she's reading as well, and get a chance to talk about it with her, so she can feel our connection and not feel like my activities make us distant and unrelated. So that would be the way I'd handle that problem. I would do it consciously. I would figure out how to participate in my wife's interests, predicting that my activity distant from her, she's sitting on the couch watching TV, would be a problem in the future.
Yeah.
I'd want to head that one off at the pass, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't want my wife saying incompatibility. That word's another dirty word,
Yeah, I fell out of love. Yeah. I did, and we're talking about your book, Learn to Love: Guide to Healing Your Disappointing Love Life, and Dr. Thomas Jordan. And I think it's interesting when we look at love and how we think about it. Again, it's such a multifaceted thing. Who do you go to learn about love and how it works, how it flows, so that you can help other people channel it in the way that it needs to go? Or is it even channelable? I don't know.
I learned a lot about love in my personal therapy experience as part of my training. I'm a psychologist as well as an analyst, a psychoanalyst here in New York, and I'm on the faculty of NYU Postdoc, and I graduated from that institute. That's specialized training beyond psychologist. So my analyst, as part of that training, was someone who I think understood love in a very significant way, and understood the relationship between learning and love, which is something I developed for the purposes of writing the book. So he showed me a lot about my love life. In fact, one of the inspirations for writing the book was some of the changes I made in my own love life, because I grew up in a home with a mom that was a bit on the depressed side, unhappy, dependent and controlling. And I learned that is what to expect in my love life. So I found people who were dependent and controlling, or I assumed they were dependent and controlling, because that's the template I had in my mind, until he pointed out to me that I was using this blueprint and looking for something that would probably make me very unhappy in my love life going forward. And it was at that point that I backed away a little bit to understand what was going on inside of me that was manufacturing that pattern over and over again. And I made some significant changes in my love life. And it wasn't too long after that I got married. to an independent, not controlling woman. So it was like, okay, there's something to this. You can shift your love life. We take care of everything else in our lives, our medical life, our social life, our financial life. We have to take care of our love life as well. If it's not operating correctly because we've learned something unhealthy, that can be changed. We can unlearn what we've learned. Learning is a wonderful asset. It is one of the best things about being a human being. We learn from the moment we're born to the moment we die. And we can unlearn what we've learned and learn something new. So becoming aware of what we've learned is absolutely precious.
I love that. That's a great answer. The concept of learning, and then just even the path, the pursuit of learning. You're doing it. Even if you're not satisfied with this book, you go on to the next book and the next book. And it could be that 5 books from now or 5 courses from now, it's something from that first book unlocks and arrives for you. I mean,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Let me tell you a little story about a guy in California. Matter of fact, you're a neck of the woods, UCLA, Berkeley. Back in 1972, you might recognize his name. Leo Buscaglia was a doctor of, I believe, education. And he had a class, and unfortunately, a young female student committed suicide. And apparently it was over a relationship difficulty. So he was very moved by that. He was an emotional man and very sensitive man. And so he went to the administration of the college and he said, all right, you guys, I want to teach a love class. My students need to understand love better. And they laughed. Leo, don't you have something better to do with your time? And he persisted and persisted until finally they said, okay, no credit. You can use a room. 400 students, 100 a semester, standing room only for that class. He was so moved by that, he wrote a series of books about the relationship between love and learning. And he's another inspiration for writing my book. But it's so interesting, people, I think, believe that love should be learned in the family of origin, and that's great, but not just there. Because sometimes what we learn is not good enough or unhealthy and needs to be changed.
Yeah, that is fantastic. When I was growing up, my dad was not the best dad, and so when I would see my friends who came from a healthy, happy family, and I would see them express love towards each other, I would think, something's up here. They're putting me on, like this is not real. But it turned out they actually all loved each other,
Right. Well, you get a chance to improve on his model.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the good thing is, and if you're into consciousness, which is that wonderful feature with learning, is a way to change ourselves, then you can review what you might have learned from your father and decide, what am I going to keep?
Yeah.
What am I going to let go of? And that kind of self-knowledge is a wonderful foundation from which to make sure you have a healthy and happy life. It's a great practice.
My model was to do the opposite of what he did. But I still had to learn, to love things and trust things and all that. I'm curious because, it's fun to talk about happy, healthy relationships, but for those of us that are struggling, there's a lot of things, especially with the pandemic, because it's just, people aren't comfortable with uncertainty, and they're not comfortable with death and those kind of things. They're not supposed to be. So it makes things hard. When you have 2 people that have this overriding problem of a pandemic, but also 2 people that are independent, like we don't need each other like we used to. A person can live a solo life their entire life, and you don't have to go to church. You don't have to have a community around you. You really can survive by yourself. So when you have people that are independent but want to live together, they're both in control. Like I was a bachelor for a long time, right? So because I was always gone, deployed, that kind of thing. What I wanted to do, I got to do. And then you have someone else who's independent and doesn't need me. I don't need her, or whatever the case is. How do you manage that? How do you manage two people that are used to being in control of their lives or in control of any other aspect of their life except their relationship? How do you manage that part of it?
Very carefully. And
Great.
you and I share that because I was a bachelor until the great old age of 41.
Right.
My wife moved into my bachelor pad, and I remember laying on my analyst's couch and complaining, "Oh, I got a woman living in my apartment. What am I going to do? How am I going to live?" And he asked me, he said, "Aren't I supposed to congratulate you?" And I looked up at him and he said, "What's the problem?" And I said, "I'll fall in love, I'll lose my independence, and she'll leave me." And so he paused, and this is what he said. And though what I'm about to say to you reverberated in my mind on the way home, like I can't tell you. He said, "Where'd you get the idea you could be in love and not get hurt?"
Oh boy. Yeah. Yeah. Who gave you that license? Yeah.
Right. Which means if you're going to open your heart and take a risk, hopefully it's the best risk you can take. You got the love feeling in there. You see evidence of it in your partner. You're now going to practice intimacy. So now you got two independent people who've been taking care of their individuality, making sure it's got a place to live separately, right? And they fall in love. Now the job is to practice intimacy. They have to be, here's another dirty word for you, vulnerable,
Oh boy.
which means openness. That might be an easier word than vulnerable, but openness. If you're going to be in love, you have to open your heart to another person. Now, what I'm talking about takes a little time sometimes, takes a little communication. People are discovering how to be intimate. And I listened very carefully to the way you described the individuality you were talking about. And I noticed that you said maybe twice, "I don't need somebody." And that's
Right.
why, right.
Right.
And I caught that phrase and I remember it well. And I thought, okay, I can remember the days when I told myself, you don't need anybody. You can tough it. You can be on your own. This is important. After 27 years of marriage, I'm going to practice my vulnerability right now. I need my wife, and my
Attaboy.
wife needs me. And I worked hard to set up that feeling and to see it in her. And we take good care of that vulnerability. And that's something we develop together. We're still individuals. I still have a lot of independence. I mean, that story I told you about separate offices and so on, and the bicycle story, I kind of illustrate that. But
Yeah.
there's a place where we both meet and we nurture that place, and there's need in it. There's things about her that I need in my life, and I think she'd say the same thing to you in her own words.
We recently had on Daphne Maxwell Reid, who is Tim Reid's wife. Tim was Venus Flytrap on WKRP, if you remember that show, and has been an actor for years, Frank's Place. And then she also was an actress, or is an actress, and she was one of the moms on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And she said that her and Tim worked together all the time. Tim would direct, she'd get a part. And then over time, they decided they didn't want to do that. They wanted to keep their business lives, for the most part, separate because they had different goals, different things that they wanted to do and accomplish. And they couldn't do that if they were, always tied to the other's project. And so they started working separately, to the point of having completely separate offices. And you don't come to my work without letting me, like very strict boundaries for what they wanted. And she says that they are even more in love now than ever before because they have this thing, like, this is mine. This is where I exercise who I am, and I'm passionate about this, but it doesn't have to include you. It doesn't not include you. We're going to do our things separately, but we don't have to be on top of each other professionally.
Yes. And when you say, I don't have to include you, the word that popped into my mind is secure.
Yeah.
When you feel like you can be your individuality under the umbrella of the relationship and your partner can do the same, you're together because you want to be, not because you have to be. You're together because you're drawn to each other. It's real. It's not based on insecurity. Unfortunately, insecurity can be a problem in certain relationships where people are together because they don't trust that the other person will be committed, for example, if there's a separation that
Right.
takes place in day-to-day life. So that could be a problem. Developing the sense of security where you allow your partner to have maximum freedom to be themselves nurtures love, grows love.
Right.
It's basically trust, as you said earlier. It's basically trust. That's a very powerful feeling that develops the in love emotion when you have it.
If you've got a partner who's insecure, you're not doing anything wrong day to day like that. So when I was working in Iraq and Afghanistan, I had a girlfriend that was jealous, and she would have these wild conclusions as to what I was doing. And I'm like, if I was here, you would be so bored because all I do is work. I'm not out at parties. I'm not having sex with every woman around here. Matter of fact, I live with 50 dudes,
Not
So-
in her fantasies, though.
Right. It's just not, yeah.
Right.
If you have someone who's insecure, what on earth can you possibly do about that? I mean, how do you reckon with that? How do you work together? Because I cared about my girlfriend, but I couldn't make that person believe in
Right.
my ability to do what I said I was doing.
Yes. Think in terms of psychological baggage. She brought into the relationship with you an insecurity that pre-existed you. It was in her emotional life prior to forming the relationship with you. In other words, that came with her. And it's impossible to fix. She has to fix it herself. It's not something you're going to fix. You can reassure an insecure person up and down, left and right. I don't think it does a thing. Insecurity is an emotional issue that a person has to go inside of themselves and do a little work on the inside. They may have had experiences in their lives that made them fear infidelity, cheating. Maybe they grew up in a home where their mothers suffered from infidelity in the father, and now in their adult life, adult love life, they fear that it's going to happen to them, for example. That's one possibility, but there are many others. And insecurity is a very difficult thing. Oftentimes, insecurity breeds control, which is another difficult experience to bring into an in-love relationship, because control really stifles love. It interferes with the growth of love. And some people bring control to an extreme, and it's very dangerous for love. It can break up a relationship. It can interfere with love. So if you're trying to control your partner as a solution to a love life problem, that really needs to be changed. And the change is inward in the form of trying to understand how insecurity is gripping your emotional life on the inside, and it gets transferred into your love relationships.
No,
Not an easy problem to fix.
Right. Well, I'm trying to pick some hard ones because, that's for the person who's sitting there going, yeah, shoot, how do I deal with this thing? I mean, we both like to have control of the relationship or the calendar or the menu. How do we wrestle this thing down? And I want to point out again, everybody, Dr. Jordan's book here is Learn to Love, Guiding Your Healing. Learning to Love, Guide Your Healing. I'm struggling with this. Learn to Love, Guide to Healing Your Disappointing Love Life. Learn to Love, Guide to Healing Your Disappointing Love Life. You can get that on Amazon. Check that link out and you'll be able to work on these things. Apart from reading the book and following the program in there, what are some day-to-day things, simple steps that we can take can start to, my aunt said to me a long time ago, you can't worry about Mrs. Right, but you can worry about being Mr. Right. And so, it taught me like, okay, I
Beautiful.
need
I
to,
like your aunt. I love it. If
yeah,
I'd have known your aunt when I was writing the book, I'd have used the reference from her. That's the
second
kind of
edition.
wisdom. That's the kind of wisdom. It's there.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
always
she
there.
dropped that on me when I was, when
Uh-huh.
I was 20 something years old, and I needed to hear it.
Absolutely. What she's saying is you fix your love life from the inside out. That's perfect. That's exactly my message. My message is not what you wear, where you meet, not even looking for this or that. It's making sure your psychological love life, your Mr. Right, your Miss Right is right. Right means it's healthy. What you're bringing to the table is healthy. If it's unhealthy, that means you're going to form a relationship that's going to get in the way of finding a healthy love relationship. So the work, according to your aunt, is on the inside. And that's
Yeah.
exactly where it is.
Let's talk a little bit about your website, Love Life Learning Center, and then what kind of tools are available there. Because this is the thing, we've illustrated all these problems, but what on earth do we do? Like, okay, I'm going to try to be more like Mr. Right. I'm going to work on me. I'm going to read the book. What about the website?
The website, I created that website in 2012, and I wanted it to be a library online where people would have accurate, clear information to keep their love lives healthy. So I wrote a bunch of articles. I think there's almost 300 articles on there now, all different types of topics, in all the different areas related to love life. So you can, it's basically a website blog combination. You can go there, you can look them up. I'm also working on a course right now that's going to be a downloadable course and a few videos that I want to put up there, because I really believe this theme that a healthy love life has a lot to do with learning is very important. So I'm trying to get it out in all these different ways. So that's the book's on there as well, and so it's a great place to do a little search for what might be your particular love life problem, and some offerings of what you might do to correct it. So it's a very useful website. Your voice, I'm not picking it up. I'm sorry.
What are you doing
Oh,
in
there. Thank
your
you.
relationship with your wife to maintain your love? Like, what's on your to-do list for you?
What's on my to-do list for me? Let's see. Outside of what I mentioned about taking my wife out on a date from time to time, let's see. Well, we practice a lot of talking. We make sure that the talking is good. I think I've been described as a talker, so yeah. Okay.
Good.
What that means is that if my wife and I have a disagreement, okay, and she leaves the area, I'm following her. There's more to say about this. So I think we try to keep the communication going as best as we can, and survive the pandemic by doing things that are interesting and new from time to time. We also, we have a little advantage that we work together, and she and I talk shop, which we both love. I believe my wife is an excellent therapist, and we work together. So at times we supervise each other, and that's very interesting. I love my job, I love my work, and she loves her work. So when she talks about an interesting patient she might be having difficulty with, I enjoy and honor that. And I might do the same with her, and we help each other out. And so we've developed a bit of a practice together over the years. It's been a while now, and that helps us as well. It's a partnership that I think of it as a partnership. But I want to say one other thing that you fill my head with ideas here. I want to say one other thing that's very important. If you asked me what's one of the most important thing, what would be one of the most important things about a love relationship and keeping it healthy, I would say this is Tom Jordan's personal view. Make sure you're friends with the person you're in love with.
Smart.
And the reason I say that is friendship is a wonderfully underrated word in the romance department. Why? I'm not sure. There's so many nice qualities in that word friendship: honesty, openness, loyalty. Friends describe friends as, and I've heard people say this to me in a session. I say, "Oh, did you tell your husband about that?" "No, I tell my girlfriends about this stuff, not my husband." "Wait a minute, what do you mean you don't tell your husband?" You know, the idea that you can have a romantic relationship that's not a friendship, that's a problem in my mind. Friendship imports so many great qualities into a love relationship. So if you have friendship and love, you've got the world as far as I'm concerned. That's a lot. And friends, when you've got a true friend, you keep that relationship healthy. You check in with that person, you give them honest feedback, you listen when they talk about stuff that's problematic. You bring all those wonderful tools that develop intimacy, because friends can be intimate, emotionally intimate. And that's what true friendship's about. So you bring that and you add it to romance, boy, oh boy. Now, I added another one, partnership. Partnership is when you work together with your wife or husband on something, and that adds another dimension. But love and friendship, boy, oh boy, that's a great combination in and of itself.
Yeah, that's great. Partnership. I mean, life together is a partnership, especially as you get older and you really do need one another. I love all these things that you're saying. One of the things too that I try to do, and I'm not the doctor here, you are, but I try to express.
But you have the aunt. You have the aunt.
I have the
No small stuff there.
You know what? I don't know that I've told her. I might have told her along the way, but this advice when I was 30 years old, right? So I should send this episode to her and know what an impact, because I've always thought about that. But one of the things that I practice is appreciation and admiration. Like if my significant other says something professionally that's just wonderful, I let her know, like, that is so powerful. When you say these things, you're such an authority on these things. And I try to, make that physical contact whenever I can to appreciate, like one of us usually makes breakfast. Usually it's her, but sometimes I make it. But I always try to express my appreciation for these simple things, because it's wonderful to have coffee and breakfast together. And it's easy to forget about that, but we slow down and we do these things. And those are some of the things that we do in my life, is just slow down from time to time and express that admiration and appreciation. What's the most recent really wonderful thing your wife has said to you?
My mother's 95 years old and she survived COVID-19.
That is wonderful. Yes. Yeah. So this is Dr. Tom Jordan. He is a specialist in love, and we love love on the Break It Down show. So I hope you guys all can appreciate this. You should definitely get his book, Learn to Love, Guide to Healing Your Disappointing Love Life. One try that time, Dr. Jordan. I cleared my head. Anything
love will do that to you.
I started thinking about my love. Yeah. So anything you want to say in closing? I mean, obviously, everybody should go to the website. Here's the link for it. If you're on the podcast side, all this stuff will be in the show notes. Check it out. Look, we're all in some kind of relationship, even with best friends or family, or whatever. We're always trying to figure out how to take care of one another. Here's a great way to do it with someone who's specialized in love for decades. Anything you want to say in closing, Tom?
Two things. One is, if you want a quick tip, I would say if you see a repeating pattern in your love life, something that's happening over and over again, that's a good clue that maybe it's time to pay attention to what's going on in your psychological love life. That would be number one. Number two is, I thoroughly enjoyed this interview, 100%. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
Thank
of course.
You for inviting me. The freely associative quality of it is absolutely wonderful.
Well, I love that. I love hearing that. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, anybody who's listening, Dr. Ruth is still alive and still has wonderful gems. Listen to whatever she says or write, because she is smart. She is super smart. You can't help but learn from that lady and from Dr. Jordan. All right. Let me sign off. Stand by 1 second here.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by